Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another monthly market update video for the Victoria Real Estate Board market. I am Kyle Kerr with Initium Real Estate, and it's great to see you again. So we are here middle of March. Today's actually March 18th. So of course, this morning we had the recent Bank of Canada interest rate announcement, which I am going to touch on in a little bit. I had been hoping to get this video out to you a couple days earlier, but we had a few busy days helping some clients because I was hoping to predict what I thought was going to happen based upon some of the different news articles and things going on in the economy. But here we are today with that announcement in place. So I will chat about that in a little bit. But as always, we want to start off with the recent Victoria Real Estate Board market stats announcement that came out at the end of February. And so, here we are and just touching base on some of the numbers that came out. So we had 465 sales for the month of February, which was a nice just over 37% increase from January. But to note, we were still almost 12% lower in total sales from this February versus February 2025. So we have back-to-back months, January and February, with lower sales this year than last year. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. The interesting part, though, is I am feeling a bigger pace in the market. There feels that there's more momentum in the market right now, but it's not necessarily correlating to overall sales volume. So again, we're in these tricky little up and down markets, as I've discussed before. But looking at my own business and talking to other realtors out there, most realtors are feeling that there is more activity, but especially with their buyers right now, the buyers want to be out looking and they want to take a look at properties. They want to see what's out there and what's available, but they're not in a rush to write offers necessarily. A lot of them are waiting back. They want to go look and they want to see if there's really good deals out there. And in some micro markets, there are some deals that can be had, but they're also realizing that not all sellers are willing to come down a lot in their price as well. And so they're out looking, sometimes I've had my own listing. Someone comes, looks 2 or 3 times at the property, and then they take a seat back and they're kind of fence sitting, right? So they see stuff they like, but it might not be at the price point they want, or they're kind of just wanting to see what happens with some of the global economy stuff going on. And so it's a very interesting market right now. And so just again, we're going to talk a lot about if you're a seller right now, pricing and property preparation are more important now than ever. Because like I said, just because you go out at a certain price doesn't mean you're automatically going to sell. And so there's a lot of fine tuning that we have to do in regards to some of that. And so, Chair Fergus Kind talks about, they last month with 1 month of statistics, they thought, okay, we're in a balanced market, almost on the edge of buyer market conditions. And please remember, this is for the entire Greater Victoria area. It includes condos, houses, and townhomes, mobile homes, lots, etc., new development. So now what they're saying with this amount of sales that have happened, we're more back in that balanced market condition. So it's good for buyers, good for sellers to a certain point. But again, what are you pricing your home based upon? I'm going to dive into that here in a little bit. And so again, balanced market conditions, we need to understand what that means for your specific area, your specific property type, and more importantly, your specific price point. So as always, we want to jump from here, just quickly look at some of the HPI trends that are going on right now. So first, we're going to look at single family homes. And again, we don't just take 1 month of statistics and correlate that to the entire market. But when we look at single family homes, we are starting to see some positive price appreciation in some of the markets. We look at Oak Bay. Oak Bay, is still some negative price since the last 12 months, but in the last 1 to 3 months, we are starting to see property appreciation come back. Saanich East is performing well. And, we've talked about the Langford and the West Shore. You can still see a little bit of negative price trends there. But again, what do we talk about with Langford? Lots of supply, lots of new construction, lots of new development. And so again, you need to understand which segment you're in for single family homes, but nice to see some price appreciation coming back. Looking at townhomes, I'm going to include an article from the Rennie Group. Rennie is a great real estate brokerage here in BC. They do a lot of market analysis, insights, data. And so they're going to talk about this townhouse segment that really over the last couple of years, townhomes have been one of the most stable price points and property segments, as well as we're seeing more and more sales happening in the townhouse segment. And as I've said before, why is that? Well, Townhomes are that nice missing middle, as we call it. And so you have condo buy or condo sellers, so younger, maybe younger families, younger couples who live in a condo, their entry level home. They're now looking to move up in the market. And with prices having come down a little bit over the last few years, it's a good time for them to potentially transition up to a townhome. And then, of course, townhomes are the downsizer. So the government, years ago when I was lobbying, they thought, okay, all the baby boomers are going to downsize from their house right to a condo, and we're just not seeing that happen as quickly because a lot of the condos aren't big enough for their downsizing needs, and so a lot of them are looking to transition to a townhouse for the next maybe 5-10 years and then move into that condo. So townhomes are that great stabilizing factor in that middle market, and we can see here that prices have remained relatively stable over the last 12 months. There's a few areas where prices are still down a little bit, but again, prices have been pretty stable in the townhouse sector. And condos, this is the one that seems to get a lot of the news attention right now. When I'm doing open houses at some of my condo markets, and as I've said in previous videos, the news, the mainstream media, national news generally is talking about, the condo market's not in great shape. Look at Vancouver, look at Toronto. And again, Victoria is not Vancouver or Toronto. Now, there's some analysts and economists really starting to say, hey, just because Vancouver and Toronto aren't performing well, it doesn't mean that other mid-markets, Victoria, Halifax, Calgary, there's some of those middle markets where condo prices have actually stabilized and are doing well. And when we look at, again, just one, 2-3 month kind of reference, condo prices have started to stabilize and we're seeing some good property appreciation in the condo segment. So again, don't think that what you're hearing on the news necessarily correlates directly to what's happening here in Victoria. Again, when we look at where one of the areas that I've talked about, Langford, right? Lots of new construction, lots of new supply. The nice thing, Langford condos in the last 6 months have actually seen prices starting to creep back up. So now that doesn't mean if you're looking for a condo in Langford, there are not opportunities to get good deals. I was out with a condo shopper out in Langford the other day, and some of the new developments, they are starting to create more incentives. So prices, they're able to adjust their prices. They're looking for offers, different incentives around move-in costs, things like that. So again, in an area like Langford where there's a lot of supply, price appreciation is happening, but at the same time, there are some opportunities where sellers who have empty units, they're looking to offload those. And so, there's an interesting thing that even though sales numbers overall are down, there still is some price appreciation, but also opportunity at the same time. The new GST rebate for first-time home buyers on new construction is definitely going to help buoy this market as well. If you're not familiar, the government has removed the GST up to $1 million for first-time home buyers. So I have a handful of clients that are hoping to take advantage of that program soon. Also, I've mentioned in the past, I've got 2 great townhome projects coming up very soon with my friends at Rolling Tides Construction. And so all of those units are going to be under $1 million. So now you're going to have opportunity to save up to $50,000 with that new GST rebate. So great incentive from the government, and it's really going to help first-time home buyers get into the market. But again, condo market actually doing relatively well. But again, something I'm going to talk about here in a minute is if you are a seller and you're on the market or you're going to market, please understand where your pricing is coming from. And we have to reference the last, 3 to 6 months for your pricing information. Some people I'm talking to, some listings I'm seeing out there on the market, they're pricing their property to sales that happened 3-4 years ago. And that market is not here now. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But again, please remember where you're getting your pricing from. And so a couple other graphs that I just wanted to talk about as well is total listings, right? So total active listings is the other half of the equation with sales and how we get to, are we in a buyer's market, a balanced market, or a seller's market? And so looking at total listings, active listings over the last 2 years, we can see we hit almost a high of total active listings last May, June at almost about 3,800. We see the seasonal slowdown of listings going into the winter, and we hit that low. Now listings are starting to trend back up. So the thing we'll be wondering is, Are we going to get back to that 3,800? Are we going to see more listings coming to the market now that prices have stabilized and there is a bit of price appreciation in some neighborhoods? So again, will a seller say, hey, the market's actually doing better than I thought, and will we see more listings come on the market? Now, this is something that I always discuss with my sellers is, when do you want to go live to the market? As we can see, the late spring, that great spring market that we talk about a lot, is also when you're going to have more competition. So more options for buyers and things like that, which can create, a challenge or a headwind for you as a seller. So again, sometimes it's better to list in this area, February, March, even early April, where there's going to be less overall listings. If you wait until May, June, now you're going to be facing more competition. So again, something that you want to really look at. And as I've said before, pricing is so important right now. And so again, you want to take time to prepare your home, get it ready for market. I have a great listing coming up in Cobble Hill, beautiful home. Now it's 3,000 square foot home. They had a lot of stuff. They've been living there for a while. They've been taking in some of their family stuff. And so I never like to rush my sellers to get ready for the market. If we have time to prepare, it means we're in a better position for when we go to market, because the home will be staged, looking great, decluttered, all that good stuff. So if you're thinking about selling in the next few months, contact me, hopefully as your realtor, or contact your local realtor and say, hey, we want to sell in maybe 3-4 months from now. Can you come over now and give us suggestions so they have time? So my sellers that I was just referencing, we started talking like almost 2 months ago, and we started working with a stager, mover, and they've been working the last 4 to 6 weeks to get their home ready for sale. So not only is that going to help with the preparation and listing of the home, it's also when they sell their house and they're looking to move out, they're going to have less stuff to deal with. So it's actually a great process to go through earlier so that your home shows better and you're also less panicked and less things to move out once your home sells. So just again, be ready, get your home ready and price properly. And then again, when we talk about total new listings that are coming on the market every month versus the sales, as I said, sales do go up in the spring, but proportionally there's more listings as well. So again, really understand your timing and when makes the most sense for you given the current competition in your neighborhood, and how many sales we're actually expecting to reflect as we go through that time. And again, just looking at average selling prices, I generally am always a bigger fan of the HPI, the Home Price Index, for understanding where market trends are for your neighborhood, because that's looking at benchmark properties, so the same property type over time, where averages, of course, can be skewed based upon the mix of homes that are selling every month. So if a lot of high-end homes sell, well, then the average is going to seem much higher, right? And so when we look at some of the trends here, we can see single family homes on average are starting to go up more, which is great. Now, when we look at the condo segment, I just showed you the HPI trends, which said most homes are actually having price appreciation in those different areas, but the average selling price is starting to come down. And so what could that be? Well, it probably means that the more attainable entry-level, mid-level price points are selling more than the higher-end condos right now. And again, when we talk about the Vancouver-Toronto effect of those properties, those market buyers, we see a lot of Vancouver, Toronto buyers come to Victoria, and they're generally a lot of times buying at those higher price points. Well, if they're having a harder time selling their properties in those major markets, that means they're not going to be transitioning to Victoria as quick. So I think what we're seeing is on average, more of those, again, entry to mid-level properties are selling, which is bringing the overall average down, but there still may be appreciation in them. And then again, when we look at townhomes, pretty stable, versus some of the other segments. And so again, we had some seasonal drop down on average sales over the winter, and then things are starting to recover there as well. So again, just start to really understand where we are and why averages, when we refer to that, or if an economist or an analyst is referring to averages, I'm a way bigger fan of reviewing the home price index. And so the one other thing that I mentioned there before was talking about how you're pricing your home and how important it is right now. As I said, we have buyers right now. You can have an amazing property, really well put together and everything else. But what we're seeing is that if a buyer feels that your home is overpriced, they will come look. They will come look at it maybe a couple times, and then they'll go back and sit on the fence. And they'll wait for you to drop their price. There is less motivation in the buyers right now. Buyers are very cautious of not wanting to overspend on a property. And so they'd rather sit back and wait for the seller to bring their price down to a more relative level where they feel there's better value. And so as I was saying, that again, if you are pricing your home, if you remember your neighbor that sold for X amount of dollars, say that property sold in September of 2022, right? We look at where September 22, where prices were, and prices are relatively stable, but the price might actually be lower. So if you're saying, well, hey, my neighbor sold for $1 million, and we say, okay, well, that happened actually in, the end of 2022, early 2023, the overall market trends might be lower now. So you can't say, well, they sold for $1 million, my home's worth $1 million now. No, that $1 million home that was purchased 4 years ago may actually be worth $950 now. And so you need to understand the relative value trend of where things have gone and price your home properly, because it can be a situation where you will be sitting longer on the market. And the longer you sit on the market, there are outliers, there are exceptions, but generally if you're on the market longer, buyers are going to want a bigger discount on that. So it's better for you to price your home properly so that you get that initial momentum on the market, what we call our AAA buyers, right? Those are the people that are sitting there waiting for the real estate portal to match a listing to what they're looking. They're going to come look at it right away. And there's not as many buyers in general. The depth of buyers is not as deep as it was in years past because of high cost of living, inflation, moving costs, taxes, all those different things that come into an equation. So once you get through those first 2 to 3 weeks, that's your market. And then the new buyers that are going to come in after that, those are new buyers entering the market. So again, that initial wave, if you don't capitalize there, you may be waiting longer. And again, those new buyers entering the market are going to be looking potentially for a bigger discount, or they may just pass on the property and keep waiting for more listings to come on, as we normally do, as I talked before about the spring market. So they'll say, hey, that unit's overpriced. We'll keep an eye on it, but we know more listings are coming. And then now they're going to sit back and wait and start comparing you to those new listings that are coming on as well. So again, you have to be very understanding of previous prices beyond 1 or 2 years just are not as necessarily accurate, and you can't always benchmark yourself against those sales in today's market. So touch base on that. And the other main thing, of course, is that the Bank of Canada today announced that they are maintaining their policy rate at the current, I think it's 2.14%. And so why is that? So a lot of realtors will post, hey, here's what the Bank of Canada did, but let's go into some of the details. My prediction, it's the day of now, but my prediction was going to be that they were going to hold rates the same. Now, people wonder, so how does the Bank of Canada make those decisions? And I'm going to reference their article here in a minute. But, if the economy is sluggish and things are slowing down and, things like that, they may look at decreasing the rate to stimulate the economy. And when we look at this one article that I'm going to include in the email, the February jobs report came out and it was a gut punch. There was a net loss of 84,000 jobs in their jobs report. So that would be a sign that the economy is sluggish. There's a detraction in job rate. Okay, is that a reason to stimulate the economy by reducing rates? But of course, what else has happened in the last few weeks? We now have a war in Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is blocked. Oil prices and gasoline prices are rising sharply. And so that's creating an inflationary effect, which may be a case where normally they may have to increase interest rates to offset the inflation from gasoline prices, which trickles through the entire economy. So they were kind of torn. We have some deflationary stuff with job losses and everything else, and then the inflationary of higher gas prices and things like that. So it makes sense to me that's why they held their policy rate for now, while they continue to watch the effects of the war, the job economy, everything else. And that's kind of referenced here in the monetary policy announcement from the Bank of Canada. So I always think it's good that if you are paying attention to interest rates, if it affects your buyer decisions or selling decisions, don't just read the rate announcement. Look at the details of what they're discussing. So this link will be included with the video, but do a deep dive on this, understand what the Bank of Canada is looking at. And just because one sector is struggling in one area, they have to have a very balanced approach as they work through all of this. So again, my thought probably is that interest rates are going to remain pretty level throughout the year. I think there's just too many conflicting things going on. I think they're too concerned about dropping rates too low again, that it would cause more inflationary things like around housing and borrowing and credit and stuff like that too. So again, it'd be interesting to see, but I would say if you have to make a move, I think tying yourself to interest rates is not going to be the best strategy right now because, again, it's going to be very up and down. There's going to be lots of global macroeconomic things happening that are going to affect this. And if you're waiting for interest rates to come down to make a purchase decision, it might be a long time to make that decision. So, again, be very, very important if you're a seller and pricing your home. If you want to get your home sold, it needs to be accurately priced and the property has to be well presented. So I'm going to leave it here for now. We're just over 20 minutes again. So I hope this information is useful to you. As always, if you have a specific topic you want me to cover or a specific property type, I would love to dive into that. But again, I want to share some more of that information that's kind of behind the scenes. You're going to see some great featured listings of mine down below. Please like and share those with your friends and family. We'd love to get these amazing properties sold for them. Again, I've got 2 great townhome projects coming up, which I'll be talking about more in future months. 4 beautiful townhomes in Esquimalt called the Driftline, and then 6 townhomes coming up in the Cedar Hill neighborhood called the Modra, again, with my friends over at Rolling Tides Development. And so we're really excited to bring those properties to market soon. And as always, we'll include a link to some great events here in the greater Victoria area. Today it's raining quite a bit, but hopefully, again, there's been some nice sunny days in between. So hopefully you're getting a chance to get outside, enjoy the spring air, and hope you're having a great year so far. So as always, we'll see you next month. Thanks a lot for tuning in.